Welcome, survivors. Today's topic is self-enhancement versus self-effacement bias. What is self-enhancement bias? And what is self-effacement bias? And what happens when one partner displays self-enhancement bias and the other suffers from self-effacement bias? Self-enhancement bias is a combination of 6 biases rolled into one. There is illusory superiority bias, the illusion of control, optimism bias, confirmation bias, hindsight bias, and self-serving bias. This is according to psychosocial research referenced on richardsonthebrain.com. What is the purpose of all these biases working together? It is to make the individual feel a more inflated sense of self. We don't want to confuse this with self-confidence. Nothing is wrong with having confidence about oneself. The problem lies in when one's sense of self becomes inflated and one begins to feel more important than or above, more superior to other human beings. Starting to think that you are worth more than the next person is especially destructive when someone brings this into an intimate relationship or even a close family relationship. Many times, what happens is that the person with the inflated sense of self very quickly builds up a toxic environment for their partner, which leaves the partner traumatized, feeling less than, unloved, devalued, unheard, and disrespected. It is hard for any partner to survive mentally and emotionally in this kind of environment because the person with the self-enhancement bias is going to make how they feel about the other person abrasively clear day in and day out. It becomes highly annoying, like a continuously leaking roof. This is your girl Saffrion, and I'm giving it to you straight, no chaser. Please remember to subscribe so that you can receive upcoming content. Now, when the partner of the self-enhanced individual struggles with self-effacement bias, this is where it gets interesting, because the person with the self-effacement bias already thinks less of themselves than they ought to. So this creates an interesting dynamic. So here you have someone who doesn't think much of themselves to begin with. And then the devil sends someone to reinforce what they are already thinking and rubbing salt into the wound on a daily basis. This is why someone with self-effacement bias has to be particularly careful about their mental health when dealing with someone who is very self-enhanced. The self-effaced individual is much more prone to depression and should seek the help of a therapist or a counselor to help them work through any issues they may be facing. Self-enhancement is very often displayed by narcissistic individuals, and this helps to explain some of the toxicity that surrounds these relationships. Many times, it is not instantly observable to someone on the outside of the relationship because the narcissistic self-enhanced individual may have mastered the art of charm, and so they are able to put up a front for other people to see and think that they are wonderful people, when in fact they are wolves in sheep's clothing. It is very important when dating to look out for red flags, to try and discern if someone is ailing from too high of a self-esteem. These individuals will make your life a living nightmare. People who are very agreeable and people-pleasing may have a particularly difficult experience when dealing with a self-enhanced individual, because they will soon find that it is impossible to please the narcissist. They will come face to face with repeated devaluation and will have to learn sooner or later that the self-enhanced individual will only view things and people through their own warped perception. They are unchangeable. So trying to explain your position or opinion makes no sense. They will simply put down the other person. The only way to deal with the self-enhanced individual is to accept who they are. Full radical acceptance, and to set boundaries. Setting boundaries will protect you in the long run. So, whereas self-enhanced bias is thinking way too much of oneself, self-effacement bias is the opposite. Self-effacement is when someone thinks too little of oneself. We, though, want to strive for humility and modesty in everything we do, because not only will this protect our mental health, it will protect our relationships too. Our relationships are a great source of happiness and fulfillment in our lives. So we want to do our best to put our best foot forward in our relationships. It doesn't matter how long we have known the person. The longer we know them, the more we should strive to appreciate them, because life is precious. That's my thoughts for today, guys. Until next time, peace.